What's up, people? Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, and today I'm going to be ranking the Decemberists studio albums according to my favorite. That's it, my opinion. Not trying to objectively rank these, though. Yeah. Zappa connection, because we try to connect everything to Zappa. It's not a direct link. It's a 1 degree of 2 degrees, 1 degree of separation. I don't know how degrees of separation work. From 2 degrees from the Grateful Dead. They both exist in a world in which the Grateful Dead exist. Frank Zappa, I'm going to tighten my headband for an extra rush during Jerry's guitar solo. Also, some other Zappa thing. Not really, that's about it. The Grateful Dead concert, I Need a Ride to the Dead show. And then the Decemberists have covered Road Jimmy, both on an EP, which I'm going to make another video of their EPs because I think their EP game is pretty strong. And then live, they've done a Road Jimmy cover. So anyways, yeah, that's the connection. The Decemberists out of Portland, out here in the States, West Coast rock. A lot of California references in this West Coast rock, especially on that first album, second album, first 2 albums. Yeah, indie rock that has a very folky edge, at times proggy, at times Americana, at times country. A lot of acousticness in it. They get heavy every once in a while. But the main draw for the Decemberists, if you don't know, are the lyrics, the lyricism. Generally, their first 3 albums kind of painted them as their lyrics deal with like historical fictions. Like, I feel smarter after I listen to a Decemberist album. Like, I know much more about chimney sweeps than I did before that. I know much more about Barrow Boys before I listened to that album. I know much more about Sailor's Revenge after I listened to that album. So they have a dark, historical, folky, macabre, at times depressing. There's a lot of the way Romeo and Juliet ended their life. A lot of people end their lives in a Romeo and Juliet fashion with the Decemberists. But yeah, I'm going to rank their 9 albums. They have 9. I'm doing this now because about a month and a half ago, about 5 weeks ago, they dropped their 9th album. And I've been listening to it quite a bit. So I thought, hey, let's rank all of them. And so that's what we're doing. 9 through 1. I'll put the list on when I'm done. Then you share yours. All right, that's about it. And I love the Decemberists. I will say that, well, we'll get to that as we go on. Anyways, let's go on to number 9. Number 9 is As So It Ever Was, So It Will Be Again, the most recent album, the one that I'm talking about recently, the one that came out 5 weeks ago prior to my making this video. This might be recency bias or recency anti-bias, why this is number 9. It could climb higher. I could definitely see it maybe making it up to number 7. I think it could climb top 2, maybe up to 6, but I don't think it would crack the top 5. This is probably their most, it's a very indie rock sounding album at times. In fact, I think the opening track, Burial Ground, it could be a Built to Spill song. You put Doug on the vocals, maybe beefing up the sound just a little bit. It could be Built to Spill. There's a number of songs on here that I absolutely love, but the last song is so completely different and adventurous and much weirder than everything else on the album that I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to go this direction. And that last song is the one that makes me kind of almost downgrade everything else because that ambitious quality is still with them, but they're not doing it for the most of the album. There's a sort of early jazz, kind of a jazz vibe that runs through the opening, like 2, maybe 3 songs, Burial Ground, Oh No, and The Reapers. And The Reapers are farmers, not death. In the early days of the Decemberists, it would have been death. There's like some horns and a little slightly jazz vibe, but they kind of lose that thread. I think the highlights on the album, the 4th song, Long White Veil, very pop country song, some pedal steel, great rhymes in there. It's a story about a guy who married and carried, ferried, and then buried his new bride all in the same day. Really depressing stuff. After Long White Veil on this album, we get a couple, we get the 3 songs that have a jazzy feel. We get Long White Veil, which I think is one of the highlights, just like a country pop number. Then we get this run of songs which are kind of very acoustic and almost like kind of slow us down a little. We kind of get into this like an acoustic funk. They're good songs. It's just the variety is maybe not there. William Fitzwilliam, Don't Go to the Woods, one of those don't do this type thing, but it doesn't have that sort of darkness of the Shankill Butchers. The Black Mariah, which I think is a paddy wagon type thing, which would haul people off. All I Want Is You. Kind of just bring us down a little. And then we get back up. Born to the Morning is kind of just upbeat full band acoustic rock, kind of the heaviest, but not heavy song, just maybe the most bombastic song. America Made Me is a really jaunty feel that's kind of good. Tell Me What's on Your Mind is another song I really, really like. Musically, it's awesome. This really low-key kind of bass. This also is kind of a low-key indie rock feel that I think is really good. But the highlight of the album, by far, Joan in the Garden, 19 and a half minutes. The first, the first 9 minutes are pretty much just kind of this really kind of acoustic, folky, muted, low-key rock that slowly kind of builds. There's these nice, like the electric guitar is playing this like do-do-do-do, like these arpeggiated chords. And more layers kind of just get added as we go along. Around the 9-minute mark, we hit 7 minutes of space. It's the Decemberists doing space. It's weird noises. We're out there, we're floating around. And then the last 3 minutes, we get this galloping rock with these amazing keyboard sounds that's absolutely fantastic. It is a long, slow, patient journey, but it's really cool, and I think it pays off. And I think maybe the next album could be more indulgent stuff like this, because that's what I like out of the Decemberists. But my main complaint about this is I think the lyrics tend more towards song poetry, as like a normal rock band would do, and less really explicit storytelling with really, really graphic details that I think the best of the Decemberists have. I just think the lyrics have just, they're a little too poetic. They're a little too formal song stuff. It's a solid album. I've listened to it a bunch in the last 5 weeks. I like the vibe. I like the feel of it. But compared to their other stuff, right now, it's at number 9 for me. But it might move higher. Yeah, but that's as it ever was, so it will be again. Number 8 is I'll Be Your Girl, their 8th album, which came out in 2018. This is kind of their synth rock album. There's a lot of sort of synth rock vibes, 80s synth rock vibes, that I actually think the synth sounds work really, really well. A lot of them are just almost there. Like, they don't need to be there. Like, you could have these songs be bare bones acoustic songs and the songs are still going to carry. But every time like an acoustic, like a synth is used or a keyboard sound is used, I think it's used really well. The problem for me with this album is lyrically, there seem to be 2 things that seem to be happening. One, there's a lot more la la la's and na na na's than I think on normal Decemberist albums. And in previous albums, if we had a la 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 la, it would be in something like the song about 16 wives, 16 military wives, where we're mocking something and the la la la's are going to reinforce the stereotype about American news, just like, whatever, whitewashing over like real atrocities. We're here, they're like, okay, we're just going to end the song with some la la la's. I have nothing against la la la's, but it seems to be a crutch that this band can lean on a little bit when I think they're capable of more out of the box thinking. Also, I do think a lot of these songs are kind of one-note ideas. Like, Once in My Life, we got this idea. Repetitive, repetitive, repetitive. Cutting Stone, kind of repetitive. There's a couple songs on here where we just kind of we have an idea and we just kind of ride that idea, maybe just a little too far, and don't really go outside the main conceit. Some really fantastic stuff on here, though. The opening Once is kind of your typical Decemberist, very repetitive, and then we get to the last lines where this Once in My Life, I wish something like good would happen, because at the end he's like face down in a river, so who knows what's happening there. Some very 80s sounds there. Cutting Stone, more awesome indie sounds. Kind of reminds me of 80s Duran Duran, like a Save a Prayer for the Morning After type thing. Severed, one of the highlights on here, has this awesome electronic groove with some almost like bow, 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 Western style like guitar licks. Star Watcher, kind of repetitive and simplistic. Tripping Along, a song about tripping, 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 a lot of repetitive words to make like a tripping, tripping, tripping echo sound. Otherwise, a pretty chill song. Your Ghost is like a galloping the Infanta type number. Kind of cool, good energy. Everything is Awful, almost like a silly anti-Lego song movie, like a response to the Lego movie, which I believe he had already had his kid by this time, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, no, he had his kid by this time because it's the previous one. So he might have been watching a lot of the Lego movie, and this is his response. Sucker's Prayer, country rock vibe, one of the best songs on here. This could have been on The King is Dead. Great melody, not the best lyrics, but really good. This is another one where I think he ends up in a river. He puts rocks in his pockets because he wants to go down in the river, and I think the current washes the rocks away, so he's foiled in his attempt. A lot of that Romeo and Juliet ending of your life. We All Die Young is a Gary Glitter dun, 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 like rock and roll part 2 type jam with his weird tortured sax solo in it. Very weird non-Decemberist production on this song. It's a very strange song. The epic number on here is Rusalka Rusalka / The Wild Rushes. Awesome, slow, burning, slowly building thing with a couple like tempo shifts. Rusalka is a mermaid who I think enticed people into the water and then she drowns them. But yeah, a little prog action sneaks in at the end with sort of some funky little rhythms. And then I'll Be Your Girl, the closing number, is a simple acoustic folk ditty. Not a bad album. I really just think there's maybe only a handful of songs that really, really stand out. I think that the synth funk experimentation works, but the songwriting, we're not getting those really insightful, dark, deep stories that we had earlier. So I think it kind of just, I don't know, makes it seem, I don't want to say generic, but makes him seem less the Decemberists and more like an indie rock band who's dabbling in different things, if that makes sense. But it's my number 8. I'll Be Your Girl. I Will Be Your Girl. My number 7 is their number 7, right? What a terrible world. What a beautiful world. I think Malloy, the main principal songwriter, Colin Malloy, just had a child right about now, a couple years before this, and was really enjoying family life. And one of the songs on here, 12-17-12, Barack Obama gave a speech on that day about Sandy Hook, the school shooting that happened here in the States several days earlier. And one of the ideas in this was like, what a terrible world, what a beautiful world. And it really was Malloy wrestling with the fact that here he is living his best life possible with a child, and here are these families who are now grieving over the loss of theirs. And so that's kind of the theme that hangs over this. Family life, being a father, that kind of stuff. It's a little bit calmer. The lyrics are nowhere near as dark as the previous albums. This is a very solid, at times great album. The opening, the singer addresses his audience as self-referential and meta and possibly too clever for its own sake. But musically, starts really simple, builds to some really good intensity. The last 2 albums, if you play me the last 2 minutes of the singer addresses his audience and tell me that's the end of a Fish jam, I'm going to believe you. They go almost jam band at the end of this. Nobody's soloing or doing anything, but there's a looseness, there's an improv quality to it that I really like. Then, right after that, we drop into Cavalry Captain, which has like a full-on Chicago-type pop horn section vibe. Really hooky, really catchy, kind of like it. We get some 50s style retro pop with Philomena. We get 2 of the best songs on here, I think, back to back. Make You Better, really desolate kind of rhythm guitar intro, really an indie rock vibe. It sounds like an indie rock song. And then I absolutely love Lake Song, moody, jazzy. It's just Malloy kind of spinning stories and setting the mood. It feels like you're at a lake near the water. It's sunset. It's chill. This has a mysterious, nostalgic, reflective quality about it. Kind of sweet. I like it. This is the adult Malloy that I like. This vibe. If you can this music, I think helps his lyrics, kind of fleshes out the lyrics and provides more of like a environment for them to sell themselves in, if that makes any sense. Till the Water's All Gone, kind of a bluesy, slower number, kind of a little bit jazzy. We get some indie folk rock as we go on. The Wrong Year, more folk rock with Carolina Low, which is a really sparse number. Better Not Wake the Baby, kind of a fun folk song get some banjo action. Two more good songs. Anti-Summer Song, kind of reminds me of a Michelle Shock song. She did that Arkansas Traveler album back in like early 90s, late 80s. I thought was fantastic. I don't think you can find it anywhere. I think Michelle Shock has been so canceled. You can't even get her albums. But it reminds me of that Anti-Summer Song. And then Easy Come, Easy Go, which sounds like it would be in a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's like music noir with a Dwayne Eddy meets like Quentin Tarantino soundtrack meets a little, it's a very moody, it's very, very atmospheric. It's actually a cool song. Mistral sounds like a King is Dead leftover. It could be not maybe a leftover, but it could fit on that album well. Sort of that Americana country vibe. You get the 12, 17, 17, 12. What a terrible world. What a beautiful world. And then you get a beginning song, which is like nice acoustic indie rock to close out the album. It's a good listen. It's a solid listen from start to finish. Kind of highlights pop out throughout the album. I don't think it hits it out of the ballpark as consistently from start to finish as everything else on this list. But none of these albums are bad. These are all really good listens. But that would be my number 7. What a terrible world. What a beautiful world. Number 6 is The King is Dead. I did not like this album when it came out. I'll be perfectly honest with you. This came out in 2011. This is their 6th. They had just gone through like a prog rock phase in which they really were indulgent. Some of their more like indulgencies musically. And this was the Americana album. This was the country album. This was the shorter, simpler songs album. The longest song on here is 5.5 minutes. It is my favorite song on this album. This is Why We Fight. It's got a darker energy, I think. But there's a lot of like, there's harmonica, there's really upbeat, simple stuff. There's just more jauntiness. I think it got nominated for like some kind of award, Down by the Water. The middle song on here kicks off side B. But I've been lucky enough to see them on, I think, every tour. I'm not sure if I saw them on the Cutaways tour. Just saw them like 2 months ago here up in Austin for the pre-tour for this album. And it wasn't until I saw a lot of these songs live and saw them mixed up among other songs that I think the context of them being like between like a Bagman's Gambit and like something else, a Crane's Wife, where I'm like, okay, these are some pretty good songs. They serve a good purpose. I just don't need them all on the same album. But over the years, they've sort of worn off on me. The upbeat country stuff. I think the highlights are some of the darker stuff. I think Calamity Song, This Is Why We Fight, a little bit darker energy that I like better. But even like, I think Rocks in the Box is maybe a little bit silly and a little bit whimsical too much, but not a bad song. There's some slower stuff. It's just kind of a simple, straightforward, back to their roots, keep it simple album. I did not appreciate it at the time, but it has moved up slowly. I actually didn't, when the last 2 albums that I talked about came out, I'll Be Your Girl and It's a Terrible World, when those came out, I like those much better than I like The King is Dead. So like immediately upon those releases, I was like, oh, this is way better than The King is Dead. At least there's a synth rock weirdness. At least there's like a longer song. And then this one has just moved up over the years. I find there's comfort in the simplicity. I find maybe I'm just coming around to country rock and Americana a little more. I find I've seen enough of these songs live over the years that they've kind of just like, I see the value in them. So yeah, this is a different album for them. Like on the next 3 albums, the one I already talked about, there are moments I'm like, oh, this song would fit well on The King is Dead. But it almost works better on those other albums because they're contrasting like other musical types. And this is all, very much of the same vibe. I think the one song, This Is Why We Fight, feels like it could fit really comfortably on The Crane Wife, which was like 2 albums before this. It has that sort of energy. But yeah, I don't know. I like it. It's rising up. I don't think it's going to punch the top 5. The top 5 albums are all almost perfect. So it's not going higher than this. But I think there's quite a gap. I think we got the top 5, we got this one, and then we got those next 3. Though that new album maybe can move up to the spot, but I'm not sure. But yeah, a fun little album. Every band needs this in their discography. But yeah, that would be my number 6. The King is Dead. My number 5 is their number 2, Her Majesty, the Decemberists. This came out in 2003, has one of my all-time favorite Decemberist songs on it, Los Angeles, I'm Yours, one of the greatest lyrics of all time in discussing Los Angeles, an ocean's garbled vomit, or is it gargled vomit, washed upon the shore. Yeah, that's a great way to describe LA. I'm from LA, born and raised. I can love songs that it's essentially just 4+ minutes of them dissing on LA with the line, Los Angeles, I'm yours, at the end. Like, hey, you got all these problems, but we still love you. Even some Stevie Wonder sounding harmonica drops in on it that just makes it so sweet. It's just a great album. Just fantastic. This is the Decemberists doing what the Decemberists do. You got these like story songs. You got chimney sweeps. You got Somebody Was Meant for the Stage. You got this little bump up, Billy Liar, jaunty rock. You got some dark energy, really dark energy, opening this up with Shanty for the Arethusa. Very dramatic, both musically and lyrically. This one has some very Western guitar, like movie theme type, don like lines. Halfway through this 5.5-minute song, the drums finally drop. This is a cinematic, on the screen, big time opener. Like, they know what they're doing by putting this song. This brings you in like the most cinematic, dramatic way possible. And then the next song, Billy Liar, is just jaunty piano folk rock that is catchy AF. Absolutely amazing. Then we get the near perfect Los Angeles, I'm Yours. We get the Gymnast, High Above the Ground, very low key, slowly building dramatic vibe. And it gets into some like sort of upbeat but dramatic Decemberist type folk in there with just some amazing melodies. And I've not yet give a shout out to Colin Malloy's voice. He puts the emotion he carries, the sort of urgency and like the sadness, and like he is the perfect voice for the kind of stories that Decemberists tell. Just, I can't imagine this band without Colin Malloy as the lead vocalist is not this band. Like, he is essential to the success of these stories, if you ask me. We get The Bachelor and the Bride, like a nice, kind of a folk rock tale, nice good indie rock. Song from Mila Goldberg. He used to work for Mila Goldberg, apparently, at some point, or had some interactions with her, Colin Malloy did. This is a very kind of drummy, upbeat, folky vibe. The Soldiering Life, a gentler vibe. This is a kind of a good example of this band. It's called The Soldiering Life. It's kind of a nice, positive song. Like, it feels positive, the energy is positive, but it's about what you do in the trenches at night when the war's not over, and how you kind of pass the time, and then you blaze your guns away. So like, it's this weird, like, we're going back to soldiers in the trenches, so we're assuming World War I, right? But it's got this gentle vibe, but at the same time, it's about soldiers at war living in trenches. But he's finding the beauty in like these really, really dark places. It's the beauty of this band. It's the beauty of Malloy's songwriting. Red Right Ankle has a very like, this is the story I'm telling type intimacy, simple, straightforward, acoustic vibe. The Chimney Sweep, another Western Dwayne Eddy vibe, kind of tying back to the opening track. I Was Meant for the Stage. I know there's a lot of people who are big fans of this song, and I've seen this live a number of times. I think it works a little bit better live. It's 7 minutes, about 6 minutes of very acoustic strumming type storytelling that to me just feels a couple minutes too long. For me, this song just goes on a little bit too long, though there's a really chaotic kind of everything all over the place ending that I think does a good job of wrapping things up, or like making the journey a little more worthwhile. But I do think this is the one song that's a little bit too long. And As I Rise, just flirting with an almost like stagecoach traveling music type thing, boom, 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 but type vibe, but not that obvious. But it's got that. There's a lot of Western vibes in here in various ways. But yeah, loved it. Yeah, it's a great album. Absolutely fantastic. Very Minor Complaints. Los Angeles, I'm Yours. Absolutely banger of a song. That's my number 5. Their second. Her Majesty, the Decemberists. Four is their debut album, Castaways and Cutouts. This came out in 2002, and they emerge from the womb fully formed. You got the opening song is about a baby who's dead, lived for 3 hours, and the girl that birthed her, or the girl that died along with her. We got melodies and hooks that grab you, lyrics that depress you, and that's the opening song on this album. They come out of the gates, acoustic, folky rock with depressing tales, but at the same time, you can't turn it off because Malloy knows how to write melodies, and his voice is fantastic, and the instrumentation is fantastic, and the band is fantastic. It's just amazing. Next is Here I Dreamt I Was an Architect. Nice indie folk rock. And again, Malloy's personality just shines through. He is carrying this like even if you don't know the band, you know that this guy has a presence. This guy means business. He's got talent. He's meant for this stuff. He's meant to spin tales of like hundreds of years old of ghosts and dead babies and things like that. Clear by the second song in, this band has an identity. July, July, poppy, jaunty folk rock with deep, depressing lyrics about a bootlegger, a cautionary song, almost like a New Orleans marching type funeral vibe, but a little more upbeat. Crazy, crazy, crazy lyrics. I'm not going to go into what these lyrics are about. I suggest you just Google them and look up what a cautionary song is about. Odalisque is, without a doubt, I think the highlight of this album. This dark, brooding, waltzing folk rock. It's very intense. It's got some near proggy energy. It's definitely the darker side of this band musically. I think it's the pre-chorus or maybe the chorus. There's a little melodic moment in which I think Malloy and just the melody reminds me of Oasis just a little bit. Really intense organ. This is like 5.5 minutes of a mini epic. Cocoon, ballady relief, kind of soft, follows Odalisque. Good contrast to that. Grace Cathedral Hill, some soft acoustic rock. We get a jaunty tale of a soldier overseas in the Legionnaire's Lament. Clementine, super sparse, super low key. And then we get an almost 10-minute California One / Youth and Beauty Brigade to close out. Very dramatic acoustic number, which is kind of a nice kind of groove. California One is the highway that goes up the coast, PCH. This sounds like a song you would listen to while driving up PCH. It fits that. It's got this almost contemplative vibe about it, a little bit serious or solemn, but at the same time, maybe just thoughtful and reflective. It's little prog flavors start to seep in. And then we get this anthem, sort of this anthemic sort of vibe at the end where we're calling all people and calling all this to the Youth and Beauty Brigade. Like the last third of the song kind of takes all that California One energy and turns it into a quiet little, calm little anthem. An absolutely amazing debut album from start to finish. Lyrically, musically, a little bit of all their flavors are revealed. Their darker prog side that they would tap into, like on the albums I haven't yet discussed on there here. This is how you walk up to the plate for the first time. This is a rookie coming to bat for the first time and literally hitting a home run. This is an absolutely amazing album, which means the other three are also absolutely amazing. But yeah, that's my number 4, Castaways and Cutouts. Number 3 is their third, Picaresque. It's a perfect album. If I had to rank these numerically, I'd give this a 10. I'd also give it an S, as I would for the next 2 on this list. It is, I think, them in almost perfect form. It's sort of the culmination of their first 2 albums. The storytelling, the dark lyrics, the low-life characters, hence the title of the album. And it has some of their all-time classic songs. The Infanta, nice drum, heavy, roll-in type song. We Both Go Down Together, a Romeo and Juliet for the ages. I had a girl in my class, I think it was the following year. When this come out? 2005. So she was in my class in like 2007, a couple years later. But she would walk around singing Oh, my love, we both go down. This little 5-year-old girl would walk around singing, we both go down together. And I was like, do you know what that song's about? She goes, yes. It's about two people who love each other who go swimming by jumping into the water. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's beautiful. But yeah, it's a Romeo and Juliet type tale. Eli the Barrow Boy, story about him. The Sporting Life, an awesome song about getting injured in a football game and looking up into the stands and realizing your life is ruined. It's your coach and your girlfriend is now with another guy, as you're imagining, and your dad. And everybody's really disappointed in you because high school sports in the United States are ridiculously overpressured. One of my all-time favorite songs, The Bagman's Gambit, about, I think this should be a movie. It's a screenplay for a movie. It's about two people who have this sort of on and off relationship. One of them works for the government in some nefarious purpose. The other one is helping them get secrets. They get in trouble. They meet throughout the years. But the last lines in this, the narrator, who is the one that's getting secrets for the other person, who I assume is like the undercover spy, he hasn't seen this person in years, doesn't even know if they're alive, and they're walking down the street and they see him going by in a car, in an automobile. And like, what a last great ending scene for a movie. Just absolutely amazing. Nice slower song for My Own True Love, Lost at Sea. 16 Military Wives, an awesome anti-war song about how America just kind of sells the war on television. This had to be in response to the Iraq War, I'm assuming, being when it came out in 2005, and the fact that we were, invading another country at that point. The Engine Driver, my least favorite song on here. I don't know why. I just don't like that song. It's about him imagining being different things. What might be one of their greatest songs all time, On the Bus Mall, about two runaways who make a living by doing things in alleys and with rich people in bedrooms and stuff like that. And at night they find each other, and sometimes they hang out in phone booths, sometimes they hang out at the bus mall, sometimes they have a one-room apartment where they just crash. It's a love story of two people living on the fringes of society, musically, lyrically. It is a beast of a song. Absolutely phenomenal. Just absolutely beautiful. And then you get the song that defines this band, that I think is maybe they're most infamous for, the Mariner's Revenge song. It's about a scoundrel takes advantage of somebody's mom and takes her money, and then he seeks him down and tries to get revenge. Don't want to spoil the end of this because it's a great story. Apparently it was recorded. The story is they had one mic. They all recorded it live around that, which if you listen to it, it kind of sounds like they could have. An absolutely phenomenal song. Absolutely. It's like 8.5 minutes. It's just dun, 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 dun. It's like a sea shanty type thing. It's fantastic. And then Of Angels and Angels closes out. It's a nice little short thing. Yeah, it's like a perfect album, easily. But something's got to be at number 3 when they have more than one perfect album. And so I'm dropping this to number 3 only because The Engine Driver. That's the reason. If The Engine Driver was a better song, this might jump up, but I also really like the next 2 albums. But I would understand if you had this at number 1, because this is like a perfect album. My number 3, Picaresque. My number 2 is The Crane Wife, another perfect album. This came out in 2006. It was the one that followed Picaresque. This is their 4th. It's got some of their longer, proggier numbers. It's got the 12.5 minute The Island, which has like 3 distinct parts, including this awesome near King Crimson-esque opening. It's just like just awesome opening groove. And it's got the 11.5 minute The Crane Wife number 1 and Crane Wife number 2, and The Crane Knife number 1 might be, I think, their best song. Just hits it out of the ballpark. I think it's a Japanese tale of a crane wife, of a man who finds a crane, and it turns out to be a woman, and he marries her, and The Crane Wife. It's their interpretation of that. Those 2 songs alone are just fantastic, but there are so many fantastic songs in here, and this one seems to have the widest spread of sort of like, we got a little bit of our country rock, we got a little proggy rock, we got a little folk rock, we got some dark stuff with the Shankill Butchers, like just don't let your kids out at night with the Shankill Butchers arrive. We got the awesome bounce of The Perfect Crime. We got Summer Song on here. We got Anti-Summer Song. I'd already talked about another album. The Crane Wife 3, this awesome sort of acoustic-y number that opens the album. And then The Crane Wife 1 and 2 are at the end of the album, or the penultimate song on the album. I've been lucky enough to see this band, I don't know, does close to 20 times at this point. They play a lot of festivals, so I've seen them on festivals. I've seen them in Austin every time they come through Austin. I don't think they've ever played San Antonio. And I've only seen The Crane Wife 1, 2, and 3 in order once. One of the most magical experiences of my life. One of the best concerts of my life. The Stubbs on the King is Dead tour. Just phenomenal. The night before, they opened in Dallas with The Tane. So an EP I'll be talking about on another video. But yeah, and Yankee Bayonet, kind of your typical like almost folky rock, Americana type number. Oh, Valencia, When the War Came, a little darker, moodier type number. Yeah, it's just it's a fantastic album. And there are so many flavors, and there's sort of just these long, the second album and the second to last album are the long albums that kind of like way down the corners of the albums, and everything else in between is so much variety and so much different, like, things to eat and taste and enjoy, but it all kind of sounds like the Decemberists. Just a perfectly sequenced album, just absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, highly, highly recommend this. This is a great starting album. I think this and Picaresque, if you're not familiar with the Decemberists and you've made it this far and you actually want to check them out, these are the two albums I would start with. My number one, I don't think is the best one to start with, but this and Picaresque, perfect 10s, S tier albums, fantastic. My number two, which means my number one is this. And my number one is The Hazards of Love, their fully committed concept album that rocks harder than anything else. It's got progginess in it, but it's also got what the Decemberists do best, sort of acoustic, funky stuff, folky stuff. The story is pretty much, there's a woman, I might have this wrong, I don't really care. I've listened to it enough time, but I don't think I've ever actually sat and read the lyrics. I just absorbed it. But there's a woman named Margaret who falls in love with a shapeshifter. She finds him as a fawn. And they fall in love. And then the fawn's mother, the queen, right? She's like the queen of the forest. She doesn't approve of this and tries to break them apart. She eventually hires a rake, a vagabond, to like mess them up. They finally escape. And in the very last song, which might be I don't know what my favorite December song is. It's gonna be a hard top 10 list. At the very end, spoiler alert, they escape as they go across a river, but their boat is sinking. And the final song, I think, is him, the shapeshifter, singing a love song to her as the water laps over the edges of the boat. Now he's just happy that he's here with her as they drown together. But these are the hazards of love. It's just heartbreaking. It's beautiful. It's sort of it's Hazards of Love 4, so that kind of recurs. That theme recurs throughout the album. Hazards of Love 1 sets up the story. We got a lot of little interesting scenes where different characters come and interact. The woman who sings the Queen's part, what is her name? Sharon Nova, I think is her name. Just kills it. She comes in as the Queen, and the Queen has this dun, 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 dun. It just has this stomping rock. Margaret also kills it. I think there's a different vocalist who does Margaret's voice. Is Becky Stark. Sharon Nova does the Queen's voice. Both of them are killing it. I think I might have actually just sang Margaret's theme instead of the Queen's theme. But when they come in, the music just gets heavy. Margaret also has some lighter parts. There's a song called The Rake Song, in which the rake tells his backstory, how he became the narrator of our tale, in which he married a woman who had a bunch of kids, and then he went about like killing all of her kids. And then at the end, in the Hazards of Love 3 Revenge, all of these kids come back and torture him and taunt him in this really weird psychedelic circus gone wrong type twist on the Hazards of Love. That's fantastic. We get some straight up prog action with Chris Funk, the guitar player, who's fantastic, on the Queen's Rebuke / The Crossing. Yeah, it's you got this, the Wanting comes in waves, which has this nice, awesome build part, and then that goes into the Queen. I think the story is fantastic. I think the story plays out. Like, I don't think the thread gets lost as the story goes on. I read a review of this, in which someone said the problem with this album is there's not enough standout songs that you just want to hear because they're all woven so tightly into the sort of narrative of the album that it's hard to like, I just want to listen to this. I disagree with that. I think you can pull out the Rake song. I think the Hazards of Love song could be standalone songs. I think Won't Want for Love, the Margaret song. I think there's a number of songs on here that do stand on their own. And I also think as someone who does like to listen to albums in their entirety, I like the fact that when I put on this album, it literally compels me to listen all the way through because there are great, great, great songs in every step of this journey. Like the opening Hazard of Love is fantastic. Then you get through the Won't Want for Love, which is kind of big. Then you kind of get your way through some quieter stuff, but then you get the Wanting Comes in Waves with the Queen yelling that she will be repaid, in which the vocal performance on that is just like, bow down to this woman. Then you get the Rake song, which is irresistible. You get the Crossing, the prog rock jammy thing. Then you get the crazy Ghost come back. There are so many peaks throughout this thing that those acoustic numbers, you need those in order to just like not OD on this album. I think this is a perfect creation, but I love indulgent. When a concept album works, I'm going with that every time. And I think this is I think this is a perfect album. For this tour, got to see them twice on this tour also. That was it. They did the album live, and then they would come back and do some encore numbers for different songs. But yeah, I'm not sure it's the best album to start out on unless you just like your indulgent proggy stuff and your concept albums with like some folky stuff mixed in. But man, this is my favorite, hands down, not even a competition. I love this album. My number one, The Hazards of Love. All right, that's what they look like in writing. Yeah, things I just said. I would say those top three are perfect albums. Like, I mean, different times in my life, I probably would have put those in different orders. I think Castaway and Cutouts is pretty close to being a perfect album for a debut album. So those top fours, I don't think you can go wrong with those top fours. And then after that, I think Her Majesty's is also pretty strong, just to stop below the debut. King is Dead grows every year, but I think it's reached its limit at 6. And those bottom three, they're not bad albums by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't think they're quite as inspired and quite as like niche. The Decemberists doing what they're the best at. I feel like they've gone away a little bit as they've gotten older, and maybe Malloy's just run out of sordid tales to tell. I don't know. We'll see. But the last song on number 9, what is it called? The Joan something? I always forget the name of that. Joan of the Forest? Oh, it is Joan of the something. Can't even remember. I feel like that's leading us to some good things. Leading us, like maybe the next album will be proggier and weirder again. I'm hoping. Anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Let me know your favorite Decemberist albums, rank the Decemberists, all that stuff. Fantastic band. And if you check them out because of this video, let me know what you think. I love the feedback. I'm really doing these things to turn people on to new music, or to get to people to appreciate maybe music they never got a chance to, because I think the more music we all love, the better the world is. So let's hope you discover something new if you don't already like this band. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do all those things, and go listen to the Crane Wife for Picaresque, and then get to the Hazards of Love, and let that be your favorite after you've already listened to the other two. Peace. Talk to you later.